Guys, the live shows on SECFT are back. We are back on YouTube after a year of absence, and genuinely, I want to just thank everybody for the support. It's meant a lot, and we are back talking about the Gamecocks, our favorite thing to do. And with me, my special guest and my friend Gavin. Welcome to Gamecock Sports Talk with Gavin. How you doing today, Gavin?
I'm doing great, man. It's so great to be back. Thank you for having me, dude. I've been looking forward to this
Oh
for a
yeah.
long time, man. I mean,
Oh yeah.
at first I didn't think it was a possibility, but I am so glad we're back doing this, and I am more than honored to talk about Gamecock football for this upcoming 2024 season with you.
Yep. Only 2 weeks away. Like it's
I can't
incredible
even
just
believe
how
it. I
much it is.
cannot believe it. The, time's just going by like so much faster now, man.
I know.
Like, I'm so excited for the season, man. Even if you get upset or something, like I still miss having that. I'd rather be upset over a game than like just not having college football. I'd
Yeah.
rather, yeah.
Man.
You know how I feel. Like I
Pulling for the
I, I love
Gamecocks.
football so much.
Pulling for the Gamecocks, you just know you're gonna get upset. Like
Yeah.
let's just be
Every season, you
honest.
know you're gonna get upset. Every season. Last year it was a Florida game. Who knows what it's gonna be this season? But hey,
Oh god, let's not
anything
even
can
go
happen.
there.
Anything can happen.
Let's not even go there. Anyways.
Oh man.
Oh man, but it's great to be back. Win or lose, we love them, and we're always happy to be talking about them. So on today's show, we're going to be talking about the most important game of the Gamecocks 2024 season, and we're going to be giving our best case and worst case record predictions for the season. And we're also going to go over a little fun thing as well. What's the most likely home upset and road upsets, because it's always special when the Gamecocks get a upset, whether it's on the road or at home. It's always magical when they do it. And without further ado, let's get started. So, Gavin, you want to go first on the most important game of the season, or would you like me to go first?
I'll have you go first, and then
All right.
I'll top up after that.
All right. I'm going to be honest. There's actually a lot of games I could say for this, because there are a lot of games that could be deemed important this season, right? You got Kentucky on the road. You got Texas A&M. You got Missouri. Obviously, the Clemson game at the end of every season is important. It's a rivalry, and there's a lot of games that could just be considered most important. But for me personally, last year it was the Florida game that was the most important game of the season, and as we saw, that was the game that unraveled the Gamecocks' hopes for meeting the postseason and just killed any chance of having a successful season. This year, in my opinion, I think the most important game of the season is on the road, week 2 on the road at Kentucky. Because guys, let's just be honest. Look at this schedule, man. You got LSU the next week, then you got Ole Miss at home, on the road at Alabama and Oklahoma back to back, then Texas A&M at home, Missouri at home, who's going to be like a top 15 team, and then Clemson on the road. It's already going to be really tough to make a bowl game, right? And to
Every
really
year.
have a chance to do that, in my opinion, you have to start 2-0, because you should beat Old Dominion, right? I know Old Dominion's giving teams like Virginia Tech headaches, but let's be honest, South Carolina should win that one. You start 2-0, then you have Akron, and yes, 3 wins. Then you have Vanderbilt, then Wofford, that's 5, and could South Carolina pull an upset? So, to really have a chance, I really think you got to win that Kentucky game, man. I really think you do. Not to mention South Carolina, 2 in a row for Kentucky. They're starting to kind of regain that series. The Cats, they've had it in their paw for the last 10 years, but now the Gamecocks are starting to get it back in their spurs. And it's been really awesome. Even though last year was kind of an ugly game, we saw the toughness and the grit of the Gamecock football to get that win in Columbia. Could the Gamecocks make it 3 years in a row? And I think winning that game would be huge, and it could determine whether the Gamecocks go bowling or not this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Every season, I mean, Shane Beamer has a lot of weights on his shoulder this season. I mean, unfortunately for South Carolina, it's the goal is to make a bowl game. I know Shane Beamer said at media days we are a college football playoff caliber team, or she said something like that. We aim to be in the playoffs. That's the team that we want to be. But honestly, I mean, that's a lot to think of. That's a lot to think of because first you need to be able to keep your job and make bowl games and win games you're not supposed to if you actually want to make the playoffs. And with that being said, I mean, there's many games on the schedule that are important, but like you said, the most important one to prove all the haters wrong, the doubters wrong, to prove every person wrong. Most people have us losing this game from what I've seen, but it's week 2 at Kentucky. We beat them the last 2 years. We won on the road in Kentucky 2022. Same with last year. Wasn't pretty, like you said, but I'm not saying we're gonna win it. I'm not saying we're gonna lose it yet. We'll get to that sometime, but as of right now, that is your most important game if you want to have a shot having a good season. Because yep, you go back at home against LSU, which is tough, and then you got a tough 3-game stretch, which is probably one of the most brutal ones behind like probably Florida, because you got Ole Miss at home, then you go on the road at Bama and at Oklahoma. Like that's a brutal 3-game stretch. One of
All
the
ranked
worst.
teams. All ranked teams.
Yes, all ranked teams. Yeah, that's all ranked teams, and it's not an easy stretch. But if you want to get set up with a good shot at, not just a bowl game, you're gonna need to win that Kentucky game because if you don't, it it's gonna feel like 2023 all over again because you didn't beat North Carolina because that was the most important game, the opener. That didn't say. Oh, and also the Florida game was important too because if you actually won that game, would have been bowl eligible. And then the thought of Shane Beamer being on the hot seat possibly wouldn't even be a thought because he's got to make a bowl game this season and then he'll have a big chip on his shoulder next season if we don't make a bowl game this season. But if you want to make a bowl game this season, if you want to have a great chance at that, you need to win week 2 at Kentucky, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And, like you said, it's just hard for me to think about this team getting to a bowl game. Like, how is South Carolina going to get to a bowl game if they don't beat Kentucky? I'm not trying to doubt our players. I'm not trying to doubt the team, but like, let's be honest. Look at the schedule. Look at this schedule. Right now, most of the teams you play, they are in way better positions than you. You just went 5-7. After a brutal season, injuries plagued your team. I mean, you lost games that were important, like the UNC game and the Florida game. If you lose this Kentucky game, I just don't see this team getting to bowl eligibility. Maybe Beamer Ball, maybe that magic shows up and we see an upset or two this season. We didn't see much of that last year or any of that. Maybe we see it this year, but I'm just telling you the truth. Looking at this schedule and realistically speaking, if you don't win that Kentucky game, if you don't start 2-0, it's going to be very, very tough to make a bowl game, and I think that's the goal this season.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough road.
So, best case, worst case for South Carolina football this season. Now, this is realistic, best case, worst case, like, who was the Spurs Up Show always said, like, not 0-12 or 12-0. This is like realistic, best case, worst case.
Yep.
In my honest opinion, the best case scenario for South Carolina is 7-5. Because you think, let's say South Carolina does beat Kentucky. They win the games they're supposed to, and maybe they get an extra upset in there against LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, or they even get one against Texas A&M, Missouri, or they beat Clemson on the road again. 7-5 is not out of the realm of possibility, but it's going to be tough. I feel like that's the height with this schedule, man. I don't, maybe some of you could say 8-4, but I just don't see it. I don't see 8-4 really being the height with this schedule. It's a brutal schedule, guys. It's going to be really tough to make a bowl game this year. Worst case scenario, and my God, I pray this doesn't happen. I pray this doesn't happen. But in my opinion, my worst case scenario is 4-8. And that would be a very, very disappointing season. And with that, I mean, the heat around Shane Beamer would be hard to ignore. It would be so, so, so loud. I mean, you think we're hearing it this off season? Oh my God! Imagine the off season if South Carolina goes 4-8 or misses a bowl game again. This is a very pivotal year for Shane Beamer, and again, it's a tough schedule. So I don't think or expect South Carolina to go out there and be world leaders. Of course not. But I think the best case scenario, given this schedule, is 7-5. In the worst case, 4-8. What do you think, Gavin?
Yeah. With what you said, the worst case being 4-8. I mean, if that's the case this season, I mean, if you don't make a bowl game, it better be 5 wins. Because if you don't make a bowl game and you get 4 wins, I'm gonna start to question the entire staff, not just Shane Beamer. That's not okay. We rebuilt this team. We went from 2-8 in 2020. We got 4 wins in 2019. 2 bad years, and then you are bowl eligible. You get 7 wins, including the bowl win in 2021. 2022, you get 8 wins, I believe. You do a lot better in 2022. You beat Tennessee. You upset them at home, scoring 63 points of them. Then you go on the road to Clemson and win. And I mean, to do that, have a disappointing season the season after, and then only get 4 wins the next season, I mean, that's just going to piss off every single Gamecock fan. And that cannot be the case if you're not going to make a bowl game. It cannot be 4 wins. I mean, yeah. I mean, look, okay, so here's what I got. On the positive side, the best case scenario for me, I think it's 8-4 because there's 2 sides of me thinking this team could be absolutely shocking to everyone or it could be absolutely terrible, like lots of people still think.
Yeah,
it could be that.
A lot of people, not to cut you off, but I think everyone thinks that way of South Carolina. Like they're a team that can either come up and surprise you or a team that's just going to absolutely suck. I've heard that a lot this offseason. There's a lot of people who think that way, and it's a valid point. It really is when you give everything that's happened in the Shane Beamer era. It really is.
Yeah, it's valid, especially with the schedule. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to think positive with a schedule like this, man. I mean, we usually have the hardest schedule. I mean, this is one of the hardest schedules, obviously. Florida, no doubtly is the hardest one because you see their end of season stretch and stuff. You see their schedule. It's even worse than ours. But if you look at ours is still awful, like awful hard. But anyways, with that being said, yeah, best case scenario 8-4. 8-4. That's me being positive. That's if this team, and then you can get 9 wins if you win the bowl game too. But that's me being positive about this team because look, Lenora Sellers. There's a lot of things that the people are saying about him. He can be the next star for South Carolina. I mean, he's physical. He can throw it. He can run it. I don't know if y'all have been seeing him in practice, but he's legit. I mean, he's legit. I'm not saying he's going to shock everyone, but he definitely has a shot to do that. And like I said earlier, the most important game of the season is at Kentucky. And if we win that game, then you have a real good shot against LSU. And like that's why I'm saying this, because you can win that. Like South Carolina has a better chance of winning that LSU game if you win the Kentucky. If you don't win that Kentucky game, then you're on the path to your worst case. But if you win that Kentucky game, I don't think you're on the path to the worst case scenario just yet.
Yeah.
So that's the best case scenario. But worst case scenario, I have 3-9. I have 3-9 because, listen, here someday the streak against Vanderbilt is going to end. I'm not saying that's going to be the case this season, but sometime it could come, especially the fact we're going at Vanderbilt this year. That's why the worst case for me is 3-9. If we were at home, the worst case would be 4 wins. But you have to win that or it could be the Old Dominion game you lose. It could be because that game reminds me of the Georgia State game from 2022. You escaped that game because you got 2 blocked punt touchdowns, And I hope that's not the case for that game because that's probably not going to happen. You don't ever see the Gamecocks get 2 punt return touchdowns on special teams to win the game. That's not really how you win games.
Yeah.
That's kind of, it's a bit of luck, but it's also, not just luck, but they won that game good. But I just hope that Old Dominion's not a cakewalk. Like, I just remember you say Georgia State's not a cakewalk. This game just reminds me a lot about that Georgia State game, and the Gamecocks
Feel
did
the
not
same
look
way.
good against Georgia State. There were the same problems that they had the year before in 2021. Like, I hope this game we do not show what we had last season. Well, there's probably going to be glimpses of it because it's the first game. There are going to be first game jitters. That's going to happen. But we still need to win against Old Dominion probably by like 3 scores minimum. Like, you need to win that game. And but I think we're winning. Yeah, I definitely think we're going to win week 1. I'm just saying, do not seat that game. The worst case for me is 3-9 because 3-9 because you're either losing to Old Dominion or Vanderbilt. You're not losing to Akron or Wofford. You're winning those 2. If you don't win,
Yeah.
if you don't beat Akron or Wofford, holy cow, dude. Okay, like that. Okay, there's no excuse if you lose those games because those games you're winning. Okay, your Gamecocks are going to win against Akron and Wofford. They will win those games. But the worst case, you'll either lose to Old Dominion or Vanderbilt. Most likely Vanderbilt, but you should win against Old Dominion because you're at home. But you're away at Vanderbilt, so if there's a game to lose for the worst case, it's at Vanderbilt.
But anyways, we're on to our next and our last segment of the show, and that is most likely home upset and road upset. And Gavin, I'm going to let you go first with this one.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to start with the most likely upset road game. But I'm just going to get that out the way because, the Gamecocks, they're never really known for playing well on the road. They'll pull off upsets on the road, like, against Georgia. They almost did it last season. They can, like, shock you sometimes. But most of the time, they are known for not being good on the road. And unfortunately, that's how I'll see it this season because every road game this season will not be easy except for the Vanderbilt game. Because here are your road games. You're going at Alabama, at Oklahoma, at Vanderbilt. You should win that. And you're also going at Clemson. I think I missed one. You're going at Kentucky as well, which is the most important game in my opinion. But if a game to upset, if there's a chance the Gamecocks can pull off an upset on the road, you're looking at either Clemson, Alabama, or Oklahoma. Listen, for me, it's between Oklahoma or Clemson because the Gamecocks are going to have that Clemson game circled on their schedule. But we'll see how that plays out. But if there's a game where you're most likely to upset, like more likely, if there's a game where you're more likely to upset, I think that's on the road at Oklahoma. That's a game. It might shock some of y'all, but I've been like thinking about this for a while. I just feel like Oklahoma, they have ups and downs, but it's a noon game. If it was a night game, listen, people say like there's a difference with night games and noon games. I get it. It's still on the road, but there's just something different about night games and noon games or just day games in general. The fact that it's a day game is the reason why I think the Gamecocks have more of a shot to win that. It's after the Alabama game. I feel like, that's the thing. This one was hard to decide because you're coming off a win against Wofford going into Clemson, and you're coming off of what should be maybe a loss against Alabama. But I feel like it's a game where you can turn around because if you win that Oklahoma game, then you have a bye week the next week and go against the Aggies, and then they'll have a good shot against them. I'm more convinced that we have a shot on the road to Oklahoma than we do at Clemson. I mean, Clemson, they're not as good as they used to be. I get it. But I'm not convinced Oklahoma has proved that they're any good. I mean, they have good players, yes. But if there's a game where we can just, pull off that shocking upset this season, it would be on the road to Oklahoma.
Fair enough. And Oklahoma, I've said this in the past. They're my second favorite team, and they got some problems they need to work out. I don't think they're a bad team by any means, of course, but it's pretty much where my head was at was Oklahoma game because let's be honest, I think Alabama, I don't think they're going to completely fall off the map. I really don't. They might not be as dominant under the new coach as they were under Saban, but still a good team. Still a good team, and their coach is no joke. I think that's going to be a tough one. Clemson on the road, I mean, their defense, you got them there in 2022. You got them there in 2022, but their defense is going to be amazing. I do think their offense will be taking a step forward. Maybe not as much, but they will. Oklahoma, there's a lot of concerns for me about their offensive line. They got Jackson Arnold's a really good quarterback, and I think he will show some promise. We'll see how that OU defense will improve. We'll see, because that game is going to be tough too. But if there's one on the road upset that I think South Carolina could get, it would have to be the Oklahoma game. Again, Sooners next to the Gamecocks. I love you guys, but I don't know. I'm not saying Carolina's going to beat Oklahoma, but
Yeah,
I'm saying if they're going to get anyone on the road, I think it will be at OU. So now for the most likely home upset, who do you have for this one, Gavin? And there's actually quite a bit to choose from, in my opinion.
Yeah, we have lots of home games just like last season. But before I get into that, one more thing, another thing I meant to mention is I feel like going into the Oklahoma game, it's like you're taking the donut off the baseball bat. It's like, it's tougher to play at Alabama than it is at Oklahoma. So it's like it's not going to be as tough as was at Alabama, because the Gamecocks expect to fight every single game, no matter the team, even if it's Vanderbilt, Wofford, Old Dominion. But coming off these games, and you do Ole Miss, Alabama, and then you go on the road to Oklahoma. I feel like that's just taking the donut off the baseball bat. It makes it less tough. So the Gamecocks just have a little better chance there. That's how I see it. I'm not saying we're going to win at Oklahoma, but if there's a chance that we can upset them, it's definitely that game. But with that being said, home game, this one is hard to decide, honestly. At first, I'm thinking either LSU or Ole Miss, but I also need to put this into the mix. I think we have a shot to also end our streak against Missouri. I think that I'm not saying that's the one. Listen, I'm saying, okay, here's my official decision. I got us maybe, just maybe, upsetting LSU if we can beat Kentucky. I noted this earlier. If we can win that Kentucky game, I think we're going to beat LSU. And I'm being serious about that. If we beat Kentucky, I think we're beating LSU. I was saying we can win either one of the LSU or Ole Miss games. Like one of those two games, I think we can win one of those two. And I think that would be the LSU game if we beat Kentucky. If we don't beat Kentucky, I don't think we're beating LSU or Ole Miss. I don't think we're going to win one of those two if we lose to Kentucky. If we beat Kentucky, then I think we can beat Ole Miss. But no, LSU. I think we can beat LSU. We'll see how the Ole Miss game goes. We'll see how they do. I'm not sure. I mean, they're starting this year very highly ranked. They have great players. Jackson Dart. God, dare me to say his name. Juice Wells. They got Walter Nolan, I think, on the defensive side. They've got it on both sides. Ole Miss is definitely a very good team. But if there's a game where you're more likely to win at home, quote unquote, upset, LSU. Especially because LSU also has USC week 1. If LSU loses that game, South Carolina beats Kentucky, that LSU game could turn into a coin flip. LSU will still be a good team, and so will we. But we're the home team. We're the home team, and that's what makes things interesting as well. Even though it's also a noon game, it's still going to be interesting. So I have LSU as the most likely upset game at home this season. And also, the Missouri game could be one we could win at home as well, because you're coming off of a win against Vanderbilt, and maybe because I feel like I had to think about this earlier about the most important game. It was either Kentucky or Texas A&M, because who knows what's going to happen with the Kentucky game, because that's, in my opinion, the coin flip game. You're coming off of a bye week after Oklahoma. And usually the Gamecocks, historically, we're good off of bye weeks. And last season that was not the case, because we should have beat Florida after the bye week, but we didn't. I hate to go back to it. But in 2022, we were coming off a bye week, and we beat Texas A&M. That could be the case this season as well. That's why I'm also considering Missouri, because if you come off the bye week, beat A&M, win on the road at Vanderbilt, you're on a good streak. You got to continue the momentum, and that's where the Missouri game could come into play, to where we win that game as well. And that's one of the last games on your schedule, because that's the game before the Wofford game and the Clemson game. That's at the end of the season, because there are injuries also that impact your season. Like, for example, 2017 South Carolina, Deebo Samuel. South Carolina was still good in 2017. But if you think about if Debo never got hurt, they could have done a lot better in 2017 after,
Oh yeah.
even though they did really good in 2017. That Missouri game, you can still win. I'm not saying we will, but if there's a more likely chance to win at home up to the upset, it's the LSU game.
Good pick. Good pick. I can see that happening. There's a lot I could do. LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri, even for Texas A&M in there, because some people might not see that as an upset, but they're a ranked team. And let's be honest, if South Carolina does beat A&M, it's going to be considered an upset. It just is. And then, of course, Missouri. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I did it again just in case. It's a tough one for me. It really is. There's a lot I could choose from. The Missouri game sticks out because I think it falls on a very interesting spot in Missouri's schedule and on ours. I really do. It's coming after the Oklahoma game for them. I know someone else mentioned that. I don't remember who, but someone else mentioned that, and it was a good point. Not to copy anyone, but that could be tricky. That could be a tricky one for Mizzou, despite the curse. For some reason, Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz, they just own South Carolina right now.
Unfortunately.
And, I think Missouri is going to be a really good team again this year. Here's who I think it is. I think it's A&M. And the reason I think that is because who knows what Texas A&M is going to be. I know they're catching a lot of hype because they got a new coach. Elko's a good coach, and I do think he's going to succeed at Texas A&M. But, first year under that head coach, you're coming into Williams-Brice Stadium, I believe, based on FBS schedules. That's going to be a night game more than likely. In Columbia, South Carolina's coming off a bye week.
It is
again, didn't help them much last year, but you know what happens when South Carolina's at home at night. More times than not, they come out on top. I don't think A&M is going to be world leaders this year. Will they be much better? For sure. But that just, I look at that game and something speaks to me. That could be one where the Gamecocks rise up and get a win that no one thinks they could this year. I really think that's a possibility. Will it happen? I'm not predicting it, but it's a possibility. I do think that could happen. Keep an eye out on that Texas A&M game. We'll see, because South Carolina, like we said, they got a lot of deficiencies. They got a lot of problems. How's the offensive line? The defense last year, it was bad the majority of the season. Turned on late, but granted, let's be honest, it was against Vanderbilt and Kentucky and Clemson. Both teams didn't have good offenses at all that season. So you could argue it was a competition. And, there are some questions. About South Carolina on the line of scrimmage. Okay, Lenora Sellers' first year. I know everyone saying he's going to be good, and I do think Lenora Sellers is going to be a good quarterback, but he's got a lot he needs to prove, right? Like every quarterback who starts out, he's got to prove himself.
Absolutely. I also want to – the reason why I didn't say the A&M game, I don't consider that a quote-unquote upset game. You can say it's an upset game. You can say that. But yeah. I was thinking bigger of an upset. I don't think – listen, Texas A&M, they have a tough schedule as well. They got Notre Dame. They got to go at Florida, which is never easy. You got a neutral against Arkansas, which, it can always be interesting to watch that game. You're playing Missouri. You're going at Mississippi State, which is also – on the lots of road games can be tough. You're playing LSU. And that's all before you go at South Carolina. But I'm thinking there's a chance. I'm not convinced A&M is going to be that good this season. I think they're losing week 1 against Notre Dame. I don't think they're going to win that game. I think it'll be close. It's home. It's a night game, but it's Notre Dame. Notre Dame's known for they've been known for being really good as of late, and they're really good. But I don't think they're going to win that game. And that's where I think their game gets interesting against Florida. Let's say I don't think they're going to win that either. And then just going down to the South Carolina game, I don't think they're going to be on a good run. I don't think they're going to be ranked. That's why I don't think it's going to be an quote-unquote upset game. It could be an upset game. It could be, But the
Yeah,
more interesting upset to me would be the LSU game because that's more of
you
an
know,
upset, especially in week 3.
fair enough, fair enough. And the reason why I said A&M would be considered an upset, at least in my book, is because of, well, look at South Carolina's history against them. Almost any time they beat A&M, it's going to be considered an upset to a lot of people. I debated myself on this one too. If I was to go, let me pick a bigger game real quick. If I were to go between LSU, Ole Miss, or Missouri, I guess I would have to go with Missouri, like I said earlier, because of where it falls on
Yeah.
Mizzou's schedule. I think LSU is actually going to be a really good team this year. I think they got some questions themselves, but I'm just concerned about South Carolina's ability to stop them. I'm going to be honest with you. So, but that could be an interesting option. Again, there's a lot to choose from. It's just when I look at Texas A&M, I don't think they're going to be world leaders this year by any means. But because South Carolina's only beat them once in history, almost any time they beat Texas A&M, it's going to be considered an upset in heavy quotes. But if you want me to go like bigger or something, I guess I'll say Missouri. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about on this show. Do you have anything else you want to say, Gavin, before we wrap this up?
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. If there, yeah, like you said, if there's a game, I don't think I don't want to like make any early spoilers about my prediction for the season, but we're definitely more likely if it's between LSU, Ole Miss, and Missouri. It would definitely be the Missouri game if it's not the LSU game because, like you said, where it falls on their schedule, and also because of like where the injuries play out. Like you never know. Every team will have some injury that will affect their season. Like the Gamecocks had like what 7 or 8 O linemen injured last season. I don't
Yeah,
even know. They had so many O lineman injuries, and their O line was not good the entire season. It was awful, and it's been like that for a while. It's been like that for a while. That's the case for the Gamecocks, but there's also seasons where their best player gets hurt, and I'm not saying that'll happen. It's later in the season, so there's going to be more injuries, and it's just later in the season. If there's a game where we can definitely upset, if it's not an LSU or Ole Miss, it's definitely a Missouri game.
fair enough. Fair enough. Gavin, it's great doing this with you again, man. Hopefully next week or the week after that or sometime soon, we'll be back here to make 2024 season predictions for the Gamecocks. Guys, it's coming fast. It's coming real, real, real fast. College football season, it's insane. It really is just how fast it comes and goes. It's incredible. I mean, we wait 8 months for it, and then it's here before you know it, but it's also unfortunately gone before you know it. So,
Unfortunately, I'm more excited for it to come than for it to end, man.
for sure.
Unfortunately, I feel like it ends a lot quicker than it needs to. It,
Oh,
it
yeah.
ends very
It,
fast,
it definitely
unfortunately.
goes by way, way quicker than we all want it to, but
Yep.
it's always fun.
But it'll be a little bit like it's not going to be as fast because the playoffs expanded to 12 teams. So
Yeah,
it's going to end a little bit later this year, a little bit later. So I'm glad. That's one thing I like that they changed, that there's 12 teams in the playoff, which make things very interesting.
for sure. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us, Gavin, and thank you all for watching. If you like our show, hit the thumbs up. And just to clarify, this is all our opinions. This is just our opinions. So, be mature
Of
about it
course.
in the comment section. For God's sakes, don't be a 4-year-old. If you disagree with us, be respectful about it. If you agree with us, hit the thumbs up and let us know. Thank you all so much for watching. Your boy SECFT and Gavin, check it out. Go Gamecocks.
Go Gamecocks.